Getting funky.
Oh, a little Eric Clapton. No?
Oh, sounding good.
Wow.
Hey.
Taking requests, as long as the request is Taylor Swift songs.
Welcome to the Honest Designers Show, your transparent look into life as a modern designer. My name's Tom Ross, and I'm the founder at designcuts.com. And this week I'm joined by my fellow Brit and expert hand letterer, Ian Barnard, American retro design expert, Dustin Lee, and the incredibly talented South African illustrator, Lisa Glantz. In this week's episode, we take a listener question from Andy Thompson about how to get paid on time by your clients. There is literally nothing worse than a client holding out on you. At best, it can be frustrating, and at worst, it can be financially devastating. We talk about how to take back some of the power and ensure that you get paid in full and on time by your design clients in the future. Let's get into the show. So this week we have actually another listener question, and this is a bit of an older one from Andy Thompson. And Andy asks all about late payments from clients. He's asking about the best way to deal with them without burning bridges. And the reason I wanted to address this, I think we've probably all had some experience with this on the client front, but I actually think it opens up a wider conversation about self-respect in how you deal with clients. Because if you guys are anything like me, especially historically and in the earlier days when I was starting out, I was the definition of like a people pleaser with the client, where I would bend over backwards. I'd put up with all kinds of rubbish from them that I shouldn't have, unprofessional scenarios, and make myself miserable trying to hit their deadlines and their every whim and not get paid for it, and all these horror stories. So as I say, I do want to address the not getting paid thing, but I do think Andy's question opens up a wider discussion about finding that balance of respecting the client, making them happy, but also respecting yourself and making you happy.
Mm-hmm.
So who wants to take this one? I can see Ian looking pretty cool with a backwards hat right now. He looks like he's ready to spit some knowledge.
He's like literally made himself aerodynamic so he can like get this out fast.
You look like you're about to bust a bird.
It's because I kept headbutting the microphone with my cap.
Yeah, exactly. In your home studio. So for everyone listening, which will probably be the majority, we have started offering a video recording of the podcast. So go check it out. It's youtube.com/design cuts, and then look for the Honest Designers playlist, the latest videos in there. But if you want to see our ridiculous little faces giggling at each other, then that's the place to go.
I was going to say, prepare yourself mentally to see our faces.
Yeah. No, we are indeed. We're much uglier than you might imagine, apart from Lisa.
We sound attractive, but we're not.
That's so sweet.
Cool. Ian, take it away, my friend.
I forgot what we were talking about. Oh yeah, getting money from clients.
Well, yeah, and that respect from the clients as well.
That respect. I think it's. I always found that it's the relationship we have with the client that sometimes helps. Like with clients I've got to know, they've sort of paid much quicker and much easier to ask for the payment, rather than like one-offs. And I suppose, and I've also found, I just sort of want to talk about my experience with getting paid, is that the bigger the client, the bigger the company, the harder it is to get paid, and the longer it is to get paid. So I've actually not taken on some work for like a major brand because people had warned me about their payment and how long it takes. And so I was actually, this is actually detrimental to my, it might look good in my portfolio, but it means that I won't, it'll be a hassle trying to get this money out of this company.
Do you know why you think that is, by the way, with the bigger companies?
It might be because there's so many systems to get through to get the money. For some reason, there's like this weird thing where they I had on my thing, needs to be paid in 30 days. I'd have on my invoice. And they would have a policy where they wouldn't pay in 3 months.
Yeah.
I've got 2 words for you on that, and I do think the systems can play a part in it, but really cash flow.
Yeah.
Businesses suck at this. Most businesses, cash flow is their oxygen. And so if they can, they literally delay paying people. So it improves their cash flow, which is incredibly wrong to do. And there's some very high profile celebrated entrepreneurs who actually got their start or their break by putting a lot of small businesses under, by doing exactly that, just so they can kind of retain the cash flow to propel their own career.
Yeah, and it becomes frustrating. So you might have the best job in the world, but then when you're trying to get paid for that job that you've really enjoyed, it can really put a bad taste in your mouth from the experience of trying to get that money. And I've been, over the past year, a couple of years, been really blessed with design cuts because they part. But I think it's definitely something where the smaller the cut, it's a bit like parking. You go to a car park and you see the really bad parking. It's usually by the people with the more expensive cars. So.
That's a beautiful analogy.
I know. I love it.
So, the bigger, the more expensive the company, the more the car, the badder the parking, the badder the paying. And you have to wait. And you don't know whether that company is going to be bad at paying because it might be the first time you work for them. If you've done more than one job for them, you will either know or you will not be doing another job for them. That's the sort of mentality I had about it.
Well, it's the same thing too. I feel like with big cars, and big companies, it's the same. They're like, well, you'll take what we give you, and if you don't, we'll roll you over. Literally, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah, and the thing is, they have money to pay on legal. If you can't, I don't know much about legal stuff, but it's if I wanted to go through the legal system, so then there'd be cost to me,
and they know that.
Yeah, and so you feel a bit like. And also going back to that analogy, some people who have a lot of money will just go and park and double yellow line, just I'll get a ticket, I'll pay for that because I've got enough money. And it's well, someone who isn't, I can't, I can't deal with a, $60 fine today. I really can't afford that. And so, you have to sort of bend over backwards while they're sort of taking you for a ride, really.
I think it's actually tantamount to bullying, and it reminds me of the episode where we're talking about big companies and corporations stealing designs from single work-at-home designers, and how wrong that is, but how it's essentially like a giant pushing around a little kid and being like, what are you going to do about it?
There's been a lot of high-profile ones of designs being nicked because there's so much content being pushed out there. There was a big thing with the brand beginning with Z, nicking
badges,
nicking badge designs. Literally, they were like identical copies. But
very diplomatic there, by the way.
Yeah, I don't want to end up on a but even it being on social media and magazines featuring it, they're such a big brand that they can just afford to
ride out the PR storm, basically.
Yeah. And it's hard because it was just a single creator making a living from selling these badges, and you just get so frustrated with these massive multinational companies.
I have to ask you guys then: are you saying then those big companies that you worked for or did work for, did they not tell you up front what the payment structure was? I'm just asking out of interest because any big company I ever worked for, they tell you they're like, we only pay 30 days, we pay 60 days, or we only pay on statement, or yeah.
I suppose part of it is my naivete.
Naivete.
And I just go into it, and then I'd say, here's my invoice, here's what I expect to be paid in.
Yeah.
I don't think this comes back to that episode where we did about communication. So maybe that's something else that you can put on your form where you say, okay, this is how much it's going to cost. You will need to pay me 50% up front. The rest of the payment needs to be here. Sign to agree with it. And then you've got something that's like a bit more heavyweight if you had to really go down the legal route.
That's actually a really good tip, though. I think if you're dealing with smaller companies or individuals, you can be a bit more in control and say, here's how it works and how I want to get paid. But if they have established financial and accountancy systems, they're probably not going to customize that just for you. So I think that's a great tip to basically say, how do you guys work? How quickly do you pay? And then to plan your own personal cash flow around that. Because if they say, well, we've got a fully ingrained accountancy system that ensures automated payments that happen after 60 days, they're probably not going to be able to customize that to fit your 15 or 30 day schedule or split it into parts or whatever. So it's just good to get that information up front.
Because I think designers forget that when they're dealing with one person in a big company, that person has a boss and that person has a boss and that person has a boss, and they all have to sign off on that invoice first, and it can sit on somebody's desk for like 3 days, and then it moves onto that desk, and before you know it, it's taken like a month to get to the accounts department. And it's just you really have to ask that question, how they pay. And I think once you know, then you don't mind the waiting the 60 days because you know it's coming. But I do suggest, because I learned the hard way. I got burnt once with someone not paying me, and any new customer that I took on, I insisted on a 50% deposit after that. It was just a given. I didn't care what your policy was. If you want to work with me, that's the deal. And since then I never had the same problem again. So I guess you got to get quite stroppy.
I had exactly the same thing. And same solution actually, where it was that upfront payment. And it's kind of like worst case scenario, it's at least paid for your time with that initial 50%. So it might not have been hugely profitable.
Yeah.
But you kind of broke even, so to speak. Still really frustrating.
It is frustrating. And then what you can say is, look, my policy is 50% up front because you're a new client. And then the next job, we can go to a 30-day or 60-day or whatever their policy is. But you have to protect yourself. I mean...
You do. How do you feel about watermarking as well?
Oh, I never did that. That's interesting.
No. I didn't either, which is why I'm asking, because part of me thinks, well, your designs aren't going to look so nice with a watermark all over them. But at the same time, I have seen agencies do it and make it look quite professional. And that way they can't steal your work. I mean, they could still not pay you, but at least they can't be like, well, I'm not going to just take your work and use it. So you kind of still have the power in that respect.
It's hard because it's a bit like, when you've got like a chocolate bar and someone, you and your kids, and someone goes, can I have some of your chocolate bar? And you go, lick all over it, and then go, here you go.
I love that.
It's sort of like, you're like, well, maybe not. Do you know what I mean? It just seems...
maybe it sets a bad tone, maybe.
Yeah, like you don't trust us. This relationship is supposed to be based on trust.
Yeah, and I think it's fair enough to get the upfront payment. That doesn't perhaps set a bad tone in the same way.
No. That's sensible. There's sensible business, and then there's sometimes, I suppose, being a bit over the top. Yeah. Not saying it is over the top, but just saying some things just don't always sit. They might sit fine with the other person on the other side, but they might say,
one of those.
Without fail, I think you should definitely get them to sign the quote. So you quote on the job and get them to sign a paragraph that says, like, I'm due to pay you the amount that you've worked, and so on and so on. The property is yours until I've paid in full, and all just like basic stuff. And when the minute people sign something, I think they start feeling like, obliged to follow the law kind of thing.
And you turn around and go, well, here's your signature. Where's my money?
Exactly.
As
And
opposed
then
to,
obviously,
I want my money, and they're like, well, you haven't got any proof.
Yeah. And also, I think the more pro like you come across, the more, I don't know, if they feel like they're dealing with like an appy, like a real skivvy guy who's, you know, half baked and not really pro, then they're going to take advantage of you. You know, but if you have all your ducks in a row, you present them with a professional quote, you ask them to sign, you sign it as well, you send it back, say, here for your records, you'll expect the first proof, you know, in 5 days or whatever. Then they know, okay, well, now we're dealing with the real deal kind of thing. And then they take advantage. It's less likely for them to take advantage of you. So yeah, it's definitely in your conduct as well.
Yeah, that's great advice, actually. And I think maybe also have a workflow.
Yeah.
A series of steps that you take every single time when you don't get paid. So it's like, if it's just expired, say it's gone over 30 days or whatever, you send an email template you have stored up.
Yep.
And that way you don't have to worry about, oh, what am I going to say? You just send out the template. If it then goes like 10 or 20 days, and a lot of this gets automated. So I've had this from everyone from the tax revenue, because I sent a wrong amount. And so I thought I'd paid it, and they were like, you haven't. And so I got an automated letter in the post. I've had it from my accountants when I thought I'd paid an invoice. And I'm not terrible at paying invoices, by the way. I'm painting that picture. But
sounds like.
So I got I got it from my accountants, and I think what happened was the letters got piled up, and I hadn't even seen the letters. So I got like the
the follow-on.
It went from like amber to red kind of thing.
Yeah,
and the wording got increasingly
someone came
strong.
along and took your TV out.
Took my kneecaps out. Yeah, and when I saw that, like, this is your final warning kind of thing, I was mortified, because I was like, oh, like, I didn't even realize that was the situation, and I rushed to pay it, of course. But if you have a series of steps like that, whilst it is a drain to have to send it out, as I say, it's much, much less stressful than scrambling around, fretting, and be like, oh, how am I going to word this? Because I don't know about you guys, even when they're in the wrong, this shows what pushover I am, really. I still felt uncomfortable chasing for the money, especially when it wasn't a big business. If it was an individual, I felt even more awkward, because it's not a nice email to basically be like, where's my money? Yeah. That's a really awkward email to send. So if you have that pre-written template just to fire out, and at one of the, say you hit 60 days, so it's 30 days late, you could try and use one of Dustin's, I think it was Von Glitcher, had some legal templates for copyright infringement. I don't know if he has one for late payments, but I'm sure there's something out there where you can basically get it sent and it feels like it's been sent by a solicitor. So you've sent your templates being like, oh, this invoice is late, please, at your soonest convenience, can you pay it, blah, blah, blah. After 30 days, they get the legal one, being like, if you don't pay this, there's going to be legal ramifications, and it's very professionally worded and so on. But that way, every time it happens, and hopefully it doesn't happen, but every time it happens, you just go through those steps and you're like, here we go again.
I think on a lot of the online, like QuickBooks and, all those type of online accounting software, they have stuff where you send an invoice and it will send a reminder, and it will also, like, with, for my daughter's ballet lessons, the invoice comes over in the email, and that automatically adds to the calendar as well. So it says for me, you've got a few more days to pay this invoice, and so it will automatically, when someone owes you money, send out another reminder to them saying you need to pay this, click here to pay here, and you don't have to worry about it. So I suppose that's another thing that you can do that will help to take things off your mind.
Yeah,
it's good advice.
Point. I was going to say something now, I've forgotten. Gosh, a senior moment.
It's fine. It's suspense for the listeners, for the Lisa Clan's knowledge bomb. How about you, Dustin? You've been uncharacteristically quiet after your jamming session at the start of this episode on guitar.
I've never had anyone not pay me on time. I don't think I've done as many really, really big. I'm assuming you guys are talking about like multinational corporations. I've never done that, so I've never had someone not pay me on time. I've been abused in other ways by companies, by having to do too much work or not or whatnot, but never that.
So what's your secret?
I think it's just that it was like you guys were saying, it was that it was small. I was either an in-house designer, so you're just going to paycheck, or when I did have clients, they were smaller clients, like local businesses and things like that, and they just paid. I don't know. I guess I was lucky. Hey, buddy, how's it going?
Oh, I remember what I was going to say. Normally, what you can do, again, it is a fairly awkward thing to do, but it is a good thing to try. If the same company is phoning you to do more work and they haven't paid you yet, you can kind of hold that against them. Because I kind of had that in a situation where a company was using me a lot, and they, it wasn't necessarily the person that I was dealing with who wasn't paying me. It was the accounts department. And I just said, look, I'd love to help you out. I really do. But you have to understand, I have bills to pay, and I still haven't been paid from the previous job. And, 9 times out of 10, they're devastated, and they literally get off their desk and run to the accounts department and try and figure out what's going on. So definitely don't be shy to mention stuff like that. And you can be human about it. You can say, look, this is really awkward and I hate to bring it up, but, I actually have to eat just as much as you do. So it's a good thing to be human, I guess, about it, and people understand.
I feel like most places are pretty decent. Are there forums or places to go where you can kind of a Yelp of sorts for designers and people like that, where it says, hey, these people are really bad at paying, Like, I feel like there's only a small percentage that are horrible, and most will honor their contracts.
Yeah, I think there's a really small percentage that are intentionally not paying. But I think the most problem is it's often a communication thing, or it's sitting on someone's desk, or the invoice got lost, or I don't think it's an intentional thing. So those situations definitely do speak up, because if the person finds out that you haven't been paid and they really wanted to pay you, they'll go and sort it out for you. So it's, yeah.
And each hand it passes through, I think the likelihood of it being forgotten increases.
Oh, completely. I mean,
I think with the bigger that you go, because what happens is that if you're working for a brand, you're not working for the brand directly. You're working for the
individual
agency that works for the brand.
Yeah.
And so then what you're doing is you're going through multiple channels to try and get paid. And and sometimes it's just like, there's like 1 or 2 days a month when they do all the payments. And if you miss that, then you're delayed even more. So
yeah, it's true.
I think, it's not the case with every company. I had a really good experience when I did my first branded work. I worked for, I did some hand lettering for a few posters for a company that was owned. This company owned like some of the bigger ones like Adidas and Speedo and stuff like that. And so there was more of a direct link with it. And there was like, I did the work, there wasn't many changes, and I got paid on time. And I was like, it's brilliant.
Wow. Yeah.
Went into the second one when I was doing another branded job, and it was like, needed it. Like, it was like a lot more changes, took a lot more time, and then getting payment was a lot longer. And so then I was just like, oh, it's not it's not as nice. So it just depends on how the company's structured, how how it all works in terms of who pays who. And it just gets more complicated the bigger you get.
Yeah.
Is part of it understanding that? So instead of dealing with the middleman, you could be like, oh, I make up some excuse to be in touch with the actual person in accounts who pays you, and then try and build a relationship there. And that might sound silly, but if you're talking with Debbie in accounts, then you get to, they should be your person who you want to befriend, because then you actually have a point of contact where you're not lost in the system within a bigger company. You email Debbie in accounts and you're like, hey, hope you had a good weekend too. By the way, still haven't been paid. Do you mind taking a look at this for me?
Yeah. And in fact, I used to use that sometimes. I would, if you don't want to be awkward with the actual client directly, you could say something like, say your client was Debbie, you could say, hey, Debbie, I really don't want to hassle you with this. Can you give me your accounts department's direct email or direct number, and you're kind of doing two things there. You're telling them they haven't paid you yet without actually telling them, and you're also getting somebody direct to deal with in the accounts department. So that's also a good way to get paid faster.
That's really smart, actually.
There's a letterer I know who does a lot of work for you see in like supermarkets, so like the chocolate brands, all have like the bespoke lettering on them, and he's on Twitter a lot talking about how hard it is still to get paid by these companies that he does work for, and it's not the brand itself, it's just the fact that you're working on bigger projects where there's lots of people working on it, especially on a branding project, a big branding project that, it's project managing all those people who need to get paid, and, who it is that's paying them and stuff like that. So, yeah.
I mean, beyond getting paid, even getting it signed off on, I imagine would be a nightmare, because suddenly it hits middle management and it, descends into groupthink, and everyone's just giving their 2 cents, and it's like, just the back and forth compared to dealing with a one-man show.
Yeah, so it's hard, and but it's, if you want that type of work, you think, okay, this is something that comes with it, and I suppose there's downfalls of having small companies is that you might not get paid as much. So it's nothing. Nothing with what we do is 100% easy. Even with just selling products, you can put all this work into something and no one buys it. So it's just the same as not getting paid. So you just don't know. And I suppose as long as you're not clueless when you go into it, and that you communicate properly.
I heard this fantastic view on this whole idea that said the person who gets frustrated or angry is the ultimate optimist. And the reason they get frustrated or angry is because they're so optimistic that things will turn out perfectly that when they don't, they're frustrated. It could be that anticipating that this kind of stuff is going to happen and expecting that it's going to happen to some degree when you walk in can help to eliminate some heartbreak and frustration. And then if you get paid really fast, it's a positive thing. And if it takes a while, well, then you kind of expected it, and you can decide from there, was it fair how they paid me, or do I need to move on?
So the tip for Andy would be become a pessimist.
For real. It's actually literally like a Stoic philosophy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually kind of brilliant advice. Or maybe a realist would be a softer way of putting it.
Yeah.
Something else you could do is say, when you're speaking to the client, the company, you say, I just want to ask what the payment thing is like, because I've been burnt in the past and I don't want to get burnt again. I'll say it in better words than that, but you say, okay, look, I had a problem with the previous company not paying me on time. I was just wondering what your policies are on paying on time.
Wouldn't it be so funny if someone's, let me interject real quick here. Wouldn't it be so funny if someone was like, hey, on the last project, I totally got burned, and I just want to know what your payment policy is because I really want to get burned again. Like, it goes without saying, I don't want to get burned again. I mean, of course you have to say that, but it just struck me as funny. So make sure, do you burn people?
I think it's a good thing to mention. I mean, I guess it's what Ian's saying. Like, you have to speak up for yourself, because no one's going to. They're not going to do that for you. They're not going to run around, oh, we haven't paid the designer yet. I mean, no one gives a damn. So
do you not think the onus should be on them? So you think, I send off my invoice, they should be the ones to worry about. But somehow it's still on you.
It is. It is, because even though you've sent out that invoice, it's still your responsibility to make sure that you get paid for the work that you've done. And I know that seems wrong. I know that's, it's like a friend of mine. I keep telling her, like, each year I need to say to her, you need to go ask for your raise, go ask for your increase. Yeah, but they should be doing that anyway. They should be doing it naturally. And the thing is,
you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah, no one's going to take care of you. You have to take care of yourself. So as awkward as it is, initially it is awkward, but before you know it, you're so used to talking about money and, you know, like getting the payment and dealing with how do you get paid, who pays me, who do I speak to. It becomes like it's just part of business. It's like, here's your proof, here's the invoice, when's payment. You know,
I
it's
feel
like
so much heartbreak can be avoided if you just say when you start the job with them, who pays me?
Yeah.
What's their email address?
Yeah.
Because if you send it to some person that's the art director, they're like, oh, you know, put that into my snooze folder or whatever. Like, I don't pay these.
Exactly.
Like...
and you can word it really well. You can say, look, I don't want to burden you with the you know, admin side of things. Would you mind giving me the email address of the person who pays invoices so I can just deal with them directly, so you don't have to deal with it, you know, so you can just definitely find out front.
I really think that's the best tip this episode.
Oh,
everyone listening, to do that if you're working with a big company. Unless if you're dealing with like a one-person show, and you're like, could you let me know who I'll be dealing with for invoicing purposes? And they're like,
yeah, I'll just go and get them. Come back, same person.
Yeah.
Come back with like a different hat on or something.
Exactly. Trade hats out. Put your chicken head on.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, so any other thoughts? I mean, how about the mindset with payments? Because like I mentioned, I've been annoyed at myself for feeling awkward asking, and I have to snap out of it. I'm like, what's wrong with me? It's like, they're in the wrong. Why do I feel awkward? Anything else on the mindset front that you think is good in these situations?
That's a freaking annoying part. Like, whenever that kind of stuff happens, you're always just like, things were going so good and you came into my life and like caused this drama and like dragged me into it with you.
It's the same thing. I've even had it amongst some of my best friends when money's involved and someone owes money and they have to chase. Even that can get awkward. With people who you really, really like and get on with. It's never nice to get that thing or to have to send it. Being like, oh, by the way, you owe me 50 quid or whatever.
Yeah. No, that's terrible. That friends thing is a whole nother ball game. I'm terrible at. Sorry, I can't help you there.
I mean, and that's why if you can, people hire middle managers, right? I mean, really, a middle manager's job is to fire people and say the mean things to people that the person on top doesn't want to do. That's why middle managers were invented. So if someone else can do that for you, awesome.
I like that.
Did you know that is the most common job in the world, is manager?
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Imagine having someone you're like, hey, can you fire this person for me? Or can you tell them to give us our money? It's great.
Yeah, can you be the douche, please?
Exactly.
I'm over here creating.
And then I can be like, when they come to me, it can be like, what a shame. I'm so sorry about that. I don't know why they did that.
And secretly you're in the back like high-fiving Mike.
And then you're like typing, being like, please fire.
Well, what about that? What about if you pretended to have a staff member, but it was just you? So if you sent a real like aggressive email and signed it off as Mike, like, you know, internal manager or whatever, and then you wouldn't get all the flack.
That's not even
just be like, oh, that Mike,
that.
like, yeah, it's like, oh, that Mike, he flies off the handle, but he gets stuff done. Like,
Tom, that's so worth it. Like, make like a, you know, get a custom email address with a dude like, I don't know, like Big Mike or whatever, and then like have that guy write
big muscly
like,
Mike,
hey, give us our money.
And have like one of those little email avatars, but with a photo of a guy where his neck's wider than his head. So even from the mugshot, it looks like he could pull your arms off.
For real. Then you can be like, look, Mike's upset. I'm not. But it's probably best we take care of this.
That's good. Schizophrenic.
Okay, so any kind of final thoughts for Andy?
Yeah.
I think there's quite a lot there, but go on, Lisa, you got a bombshell.
I think especially could be putting my foot in it, but especially women, we're actually terrible at looking at money issues.
That sounds very sexist, Lisa.
I know, but
in this day and age,
we don't like to deal with that because it feels icky.
I would like to counteract that by saying, as a biological male, I'm horrendous at that stuff.
Well, okay, so because what I was going to say is, I'm not saying that that's whoever has, you know, difficult asking for money, you know, in terms of clients getting paid. I mean, them being paid by clients or whatever. It has money issues, but it's a good thing to look at your relationship with money and I realized when I first started out that I hated dealing with money. I hated thinking about my savings, my retirement, earning money, asking for money, from being paid. And I think when you kind of like grow up and you need to start asking clients about money, you need to assess like, why is it so difficult to ask for remuneration for something that you've really put time and effort into? And I guess this is going a bit deeper, but you have to analyze that, because you need to value yourself enough to know that, hey man, I deserve that pay. It's not a lot. I'm not ripping you off. It's a fair thing. You agreed to it. You need to pay me. And if you're finding that super awkward, maybe you need to look at, why is it so difficult for you to actually ask to get what you deserve?
I like that as a tip, though, a bit of introspection. And this is a recurring theme on the podcast, introspection and self-awareness. And with all this stuff, if we cover a lot of issues that designers struggle with, as you say, try and dig into it and think why, and specifically what part. It's like, what exact part of that do I fall over on? And why do I feel awkward or frustrated or scared or whatever?
I think when you contact them, it's good to remember too, in any type of confrontation that like this, where you understood the terms and they're not abiding by them, it's okay to write them. They put you in this position. You're not putting them in a position.
Exactly.
They put you in the position, and now you're having to do this. And then remember too that this happens thousands and thousands or tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of times a year. Everyone gets through it, and it's almost never the worst case scenario. Someone sends something in, maybe their feelings are a little hurt, and life goes on, and a year later you don't even remember it, and you have your money and you're all good.
I would say, if you possibly can, build a financial buffer or contingency, because it's bad enough to go through this if you're financially ticking along and fairly comfortable. But if you desperately need to put food on the table for your kids, and you're down to the wire and literally have nothing in your account and you're entirely relying on this payment, that's going to send you into a tailspin of stress. And you're probably not going to be at your most professional. You're going to be ringing them up, maybe even getting abusive to get this money, which even though they're in the wrong, you still don't want to do as the professional.
No. Right.
And I guess that goes what I was saying earlier on about the holistic look at your money relationship. Plan ahead, think about all the stuff that you need during the year, so that when these things do come along, you're not, as you said, you're not in dire straits.
Yeah,
definitely.
Cool. So yeah, any final thoughts, Randy? Honestly, that I said at the start, we're gonna just kind of cover his question and then really have a wider look at respecting yourself versus the client. I want to do a full episode on that, because it turns out that there was a decent episode just about the getting paid, which I didn't think there would be. But actually, as we talked about it, I was like, okay, there's quite a lot here actually that we've all been through. So yeah, Andy, like, amazing question. Hopefully a lot of the tips in this episode helped you and all the wonderful listeners at home. And I do think we'll probably do a follow-up episode that's a little bit more of a holistic look at getting the balance right in respecting yourself and the client, and maybe being a little bit more assertive on certain issues. But there's a ton of stuff beyond just getting paid, which I think we could and should dig into.
Random ending question to this show that is probably helpful to listeners and me. Where's the best place online to continue a conversation after you've listened to the episode?
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true, because that's something I always want to encourage, but there's always that extra step of, okay, where do we go? And not everyone's on every platform.
Okay.
So
yeah, because I'd love to talk to people about it, but I'm never sure.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, what we could do is at honestdesigners.com, there is a kind of landing page with the latest episodes and all that kind of stuff. We could maybe even just have a central, not even a traditional comments form, but like a feedback widget or something. Where if people listen, they just go there and leave comments no matter what episode it was.
Yeah.
And that could be like a little interactive dialogue there. I'm sure in no time it would be filled up with spam and people creating penises out of like characters on their keyboard or something. But I'm sure we could figure out a way to do it properly.
You know that by saying that, you just like pretty much guarantee that will happen.
Yeah, there's some 15-year-old being like, right, here we go.
A challenge.
I mean, you deal with designers; they'll find like tricky ways to get their keyboards and be like, how do I build out a?
But no, we'll figure it out. But yeah, Dustin's right. I mean, it's kind of meta that we're saying, let us know how you want to get in touch, and they need to figure out a way to get in touch to do that. But let us however you want, whether it's a comment or an email or on our personal Instagrams or Design Cuts Instagram or hashtag Honest Designers. Let us know, because I would love to get some of these conversations continuing out in the wild. And the four of us, if you tag us in, we're always happy to try and elaborate or answer any follow-up questions or just help you with very specific stuff about your creative business, because we're geeks and we love this stuff.
I'm going to send an alert. I'm going to put an alert up for hashtags for Honest Designers.
Yeah, you should. I mean, I haven't checked in a little while. I'm publicly admitting that I suck at that, but our team check it. I'm going to set up an alert as well, but that would be cool. So anyway, thank you, Andy. You're the best. Appreciate it. And hopefully you guys are enjoying a few listener questions. I saw a few requests for more listener questions, and I'm feeling good about getting some listener stuff on the show a little bit more. We also have some amazing guests we are working on securing for the show. So there's going to be more guests, more listener questions, and more topics coming your way. But for now, from the four of us, bye for now.
Bye. Adios.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. We hope that you're feeling like you have a little more of a game plan for dealing with late payments. They're never pleasant, but there are absolutely things you can and should do to mitigate this situation. As always, you can find full show notes over at honestdesigners.com or find us over on iTunes by searching for The Honest Designers Show. If today's episode helped you, then it would mean the world to us if you took just a moment to leave us a quick review over on iTunes, as this is one of the best ways for other creatives to discover the show. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next week right here on The Honest Designers Show.